Hello and welcome to my very first retrospective series here on YouTube. As you see from the gameplay here, I'm going to be covering the Captain Tsubasa video game series. This series was based on a hit manga/anime that made its name in places like Japan, the Middle East, certain countries in Europe, as well as certain countries in Latin America. The series was an inspiration for a lot of soccer stars to become involved in the beautiful game, such as Zinedine Zidane and Alessandro Del Piero. It's a series of soccer-based RPGs, if you will, and I'm going to be covering things like their story, their gameplay, how they've changed over the years, and starting from this very game right here, let's start with Captain Tsubasa 1's story. The story is pretty much what it is in the manga and anime. Ozura Tsubasa is a Japanese soccer prodigy whose whole life is pretty much dedicated to the beautiful game. His hope is to be able to go to Brazil to play with real professional players. This story takes place at the time where he's still in middle school in the Japanese National Middle School Championship. This year is coach Roberto, who recently left for Brazil, and Tsubasa is hoping to represent Japan in the Under-15 International Championship in France to be able to impress Roberto and have him deem Tsubasa ready to go to Brazil with him and train there. So to explain the gameplay a little bit, this is the menu that you see before every match that you get to play. At the beginning you get a list of all the players that have leveled up from the previous match, and after that you get to pick to do one of three things. The first one is to get some information on the opposition, which at the very least you can see which positions on the opponent's team are dangerous if you don't read Japanese. The second option just gives you what the password is for how far you are in the game, and the third option is to start the match. Later on, when you have Team Japan, you can at least select your formation and starting members as well. So to explain the offensive half of the game, when you have the ball, you manually move your player around the field, noted by the ball icon at the bottom. When you get within range of opposition players, which unfortunately you can't see on the grid, you initiate an encounter. In this encounter, you're able to either attempt a dribble, a shot, or a pass. Your player's skill level at each of these three options is designated on the right underneath their name and guts points. And you're going to see an attempt at a dribble here. And if a tackle or a pass cut or what have you isn't clean, then it will cause the ball to deflect in a random direction. And also you just saw how a player will attempt to block a shot or a pass if they are in its path. A little more on the offensive side is that you can open up the player menu to try to dribble, pass, or shoot from there. If you choose to dribble, it just lets you continue on your way. As for the passing interface, it's one of my biggest problems with this game. It gives you 4 options for teammates to pass to, and this is the only way that you can see where players are on the field. The other issue is that if you don't like the 4 options you've been given, you have to keep reopening the pass option just to try to find one that you like. In addition, if the player receives the ball in the opposition's penalty area, they're able to make a direct shot or pass while the ball's in the air, or trap the ball and continue to dribble with it. Direct shooting from aerial passes is really important in this game because the player's stats are slightly raised in that position, as you just saw with that goal that got scored there. Now we're going to move on to defense. So it's pretty much the opposite of how an offensive encounter works, in which your players are charged with either tackling, holding up play to bring in more teammates, or attempt a pass cut. So pretty straightforward stuff, and again, those stats are displayed under the player's name and guts points. Now to explain guts points, they are basically the resource your players expend in order to perform just about any action, particularly anything initiated from an encounter or your own player menu, passes, shots, tackles, etc. You'll see 2 players I have here just passing the ball between them whenever I can get back to my original player on this amazing interface. And the issue with these is that the AI is not governed by them. The AI's guts points are essentially infinite. That's really troubling, especially later on in the game, because star players, both your own and the opponent's, have special actions they can take, such as powered up shots. The issue with that is that they drain lots of guts points from your players, but the opponent can continue to use them as much as they like. An example is Tsubasa's diving header that he's going to do right here. They're usually more effective than your run-of-the-mill shot. Usually. So after everything we've seen so far, how does this game hold up anyway? Well, because of certain presentational issues with this game, I feel the gameplay ends up coming off as a bit gimped, especially when in comparison to the later games and what they did better. Not being able to see any players, neither yours or your opponents, at any point except by opening up the pass menu is a huge detriment to any offensive strategy you're trying to implement, and it just makes it incredibly tedious to try to plan out any thoughtful strategy because you have to look at that over and over and over. The other issue is that when you're on defense, you cannot move your own players into position to initiate an encounter, and that means that you're just hoping that your opponent runs into your players and hoping that once that happens that the RNG plays in your favor. And it just takes so much out of your hands, and you just can't do much about it. See, there was nothing I could do until that encounter got initiated inside my penalty area. Another issue with the difficulty is what I talked about with infinite guts points for the opponents, and not for you. A bit of a spoiler in what I'm going to explain here, but in this match here against Furano, you go up against a player called Matsuyama who has a shot called the Eagle Shot. The thing is, when you have Matsuyama on your team, when you're playing as Japan later on, that shot costs 200 guts points. Considering the guts don't go over 999, that means that you can only use that shot a set number of times per match without fully expending all the points you have. When the AI has Matsuyama, he can just keep using this shot over and over. This is already the 4th time that he uses it in this particular match. I proceed to lose this by like 8 goals or something just to him doing that shot over and over. Pretty ridiculous. So do I think the game as a whole is bad? No, my overall opinion of it is that it's solid for what it was at the time. It definitely just didn't age very well because of its interface issues and because of certain issues with the story pacing and the way its story is told, or not rather. As far as the gameplay, it's alright. It was definitely a very novel concept. It was probably the best way they could replicate the pace of a soccer match within the Captain Tsubasa manga or anime. If you've ever read the manga or watched the anime, you know exactly what I mean in terms of pacing there. As far as the story, yeah, the only information you ever get on who you're going to play is from the info that I showed you in the menu earlier. And there's no real introduction to all the opponents that you're going to play against. This here, for example, is the final match in the Japanese National Championship before you go on to represent Japan. And for such an important match, there's no transition. There's nothing to tell you that you're about to play such an important game. You're just thrown into it just like all the other matches. I guess the game expects you to know the source material if you're already playing this, but I don't find that to be good design. Check this game out if you're curious, but I would definitely play the sequels if I were you. Suddenly, English! Yes, Captain Tsubasa 1 was the only game in the series that was not entirely Japan exclusive. This is Tecmo Cup Soccer, the US release of the game. For people who knew the anime was actually released in the US as Flash Kicker, this might be confusing, but no, they're entirely separate. You saw Robin Field, the new main character, who's basically meant to show that this game is Captain Tsubasa 1 with a whole bunch of Caucasians pasted onto it. Not the most PC description I know, but trust me, it's true. The big perk to this game, if you don't care about the manga and anime characters, is that, well, everything's in English, so you don't have to fumble around the menus to figure stuff out. Oh, you saw the commentator right there. I didn't talk much about him, but he's the only thing that survived from the Japanese game. Well, the only character, rather. You get the same menu with advice on the opponent team, memo, which is the password given by Robin's girlfriend Anne, and then being able to start the match. And when you get the national team later for the second level of competition, you're able to select your starting lineup from there. The gameplay is completely identical, again with the only difference being that you've got a whole new set of characters fit more to the American audience, or so they were intending to. Oh, you got to see the awesome commentary that you quote-unquote missed out on with the Japanese version, but yeah, there really wasn't much. I guess I just really wanted to show you guys a different way to play this game if you wanted to play it in English and you just don't care about the anime or the manga. Overall, I still wouldn't recommend it compared to its sequels, which we're going to get into starting from the next video with Captain Tsubasa 2 Super Striker, which is the game probably both the most popular and the most well-reviewed in the series. Thanks to you guys for watching this, and I will see you in the next video.